let's start the episode 1, part 1 of the series of what the heck has been going on in Star Citizen to make it more stable. Actually, a decent chunk of this is stuff that's coming up ahead, but I think a large part of it, at least this first part, is going to be kind of like, what have we been doing to make the game more stable? We talked with the CTO at the beginning of the year to see what they had in mind, what kind of problems they noticed. This is going to be less about like the big, fancy features and stuff, and more about what do we actually see going on.
We'll do it live.
We'll do it
Hey,
live.
good call. I can speed this up a little bit.
Part 1 of this show that I'm inventing right now in my
But no,
head.
I'm not watching the whole thing right now.
I want to call part 1 the year of playability. So the year of playability is not necessarily a statement that we ever made. We didn't say it in the February show or whatnot. But it comes from that letter from the chairman that went out at the end of last year with I think it was like 2025, a focus on playability. It's a fair assessment of the mission that we set out for ourselves at the end of last year. Have we during the February show? Remember, guys, we're figuring this out as we go along. It's been a busy week. So during that show, we talked a lot about how Star Citizen had been going in one direction for about 10 years. Since the launch of the PU at the end of 2015 and up until the end of 2024 and whatnot, roughly about 10 years there. We were on one kind of mentality. We were on one. It changed a bit with when 3.0 came out after that big long period where we didn't ship for 8 months and my beard went crazy and whatnot. But we went to this very feature driven. We were on this very feature driven, building the foundation of the game kind of attitude for so many years, where we didn't take a whole lot of opportunities to stop and look at what was out there and spend time on fixing that and hardening that. And so it was always about, we got to get the next thing out. We got to get the next thing out. We got to get the next thing out, because we have many of the same thoughts our backers do. It's like you got to get this stuff out. We decided that in 2025, because of the impending release of Squadron 42 in 2026, and the need to let those people focus on that and getting that closed out and whatnot, we were going to allow the engineers that their focuses remained on Star Citizen to take a step back from new feature work and look at hardening and fixing and addressing a lot of the longstanding issues. Now, I said a lot. I didn't say every. It's as many as we can within the time. It's a 10-year journey towards one direction doesn't get turned around and fixed in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. And we said this at the time.
There's a One Direction joke in there somewhere.
Nonetheless, there's still people who, we see the same comments, guys. We see the same things like, oh, so much for the year of playability. That was literally my brother. I'm not making fun of anybody else. I'm literally quoting my brother. And if you've ever met my little brother, that's exactly how he sounds, because he plays the game. He plays the game, and I get crap from my little brother. It's not just the backers. It's you, Clark. Welcome to the show. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that. It's how all little brothers sound, at least in our heads. Just wanted y'all to I want to make sure everybody knows I was making fun of one specific individual that I shared.
I also sound like that sometimes when I talk to John Crew. Like, hey, what about my ship?
So let's talk about this year of playability and how it's gone so far. We said we'd check in six months later. We're roughly here. How's this year of playability going? What have we done? What have we achieved? Where are we at in our process? Are we happy? Benoit, you do the Benoit thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to go a bit further out than just the beginning of the year, right? Because let's take same date last year.
Okay.
So let's go full 1 year back. The state of the game 1 year in the past was
Anon, thanks for gifting out that sub, mate. Appreciate it.
DGS, right? So we're talking about maximum 100 players per game shard, one server simulating all of the universe, no second star system, right? So only one star system. Server performance, not good.
4 or 5 frames.
I mean, if you're lucky,
right?
Lucky.
Like when you load it in.
The parameters for us to launch a patch was basically 7-ish, which is horrible if you think about it. And so that was last year, right? So we start from far, right?
We were still in the clutches of 30K.
We were still in the clutches of 30K, correct? So we did have some level of server recovery, but a lot of issues related to it that could have side effects. Some of them are still present. We'll talk about some of those. And so, fast forward to now, like the assessment is a lot better, I think, in my mind, right? Like, obviously we've had the release of 4.0. Like, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. I'm not saying it's been just a straight line. Like we've taken some dips and then improved the stability and the quality of the game overall. But obviously we have the 4.0 release, which came with static server meshing, which was the element that we needed to free up server performance, right? So on average now, when we look at server perf, I mean, other than some egregious problems which we've identified, the we get per territory stats now. So basically, we don't just get like server FPS is X, right? We're gonna know Stanton server FPS is X, or Hurston server FPS is Y, and so we can compare depending on which territory what performance we're getting. And FPS is just one of those parameter, right? There's a lot more. But let's stick to FPS just because it's a simple mental model, right? Because it does have an effect on your gameplay. So nowadays, on average, server FPS is up 20 easily, right? Obviously, some zones, like let's say when we launched, I think Stormageddon, there were some issues affecting those zones that made those servers like dip below that quite a bit, and so they drag the average down. But overall, the game server performance is way, 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 way better. And I think having 600-700, we've pushed up to 800 players per shard, which is something we're pushing at right now. We'll talk about this if we talk about server meshing a bit more. And so we're going to be pushing this really hard moving forward. But I think that if you compare last year to this year, in my mind, it's not the same game. Completely not the same game. Like now, if we look at even the stats from our players, like session length is up like 10x. It's not even comparable.
Yeah.
So that means people play for longer periods of time and they stay online. I think server recovery is a big help for that. Though the stability of the game server is also improved dramatically. And so, this is all because of the efforts of the changes that we've done, not only to the priority calls, like you just explained, right, which is taking where we're going and trying to slowly shift it to change direction, because a team like this of this size doesn't switch on a dime. It takes a long time for these changes to trickle in. But now that we've got kind of the big organizational changes in, that we're starting to see it and reap the rewards of it, which is I hope is showing in the game. Anyway, it's showing for me, so I'm seeing it. So
he does have a point. It has increased. I mean, server stability is probably the biggest thing that's improved. Not having to being able to have up to 700 people is way better than it's ever been. I think a lot of people are expecting that number to keep going up consistently. I certainly hope we can expect to see another increase in the player cap soon, but I would have never even imagined this game running with 700 people in a shard a year ago. That just wouldn't have happened.
So compare 1 year back to now, I think it's night and day. There's still a long ways to go. I'm not saying we're happy with this. I'm just saying,
There's folks in the chat specifically talking about, okay, well, let's go do Hathor and let's go do this. And you alluded to that there. You're talking about a macro sense throughout the entire persistent universe, every single aspect of the game. It's to call out specific, this specific area is bad and this specific area is bad. That's not what we're talking about. We acknowledge that. Instead, those are areas that still need improvement. So, as we do this Russian nesting doll kind of conversation and go down, we'll start drilling down to individual aspects later in the show. At its broadest though, overall, the things that would just prevent people from being able to log in, the things that would prevent people from being able to stay in, those larger scale issues that it doesn't matter if you fix the other things. If you're constantly getting a 30K, if you're constantly getting kicked out, if you constantly can't get back in, it doesn't matter if we've improved Hathor performance if you can't get to Hathor. Those bigger things are what we're talking about here, and those have seen some measurable, marked improvements. I mean, an improvement from 4 to 5 FPS to 20 FPS is huge. Nobody even talks about 30K stuff anymore. Server recovery is, it's hard to make a trailer or anything. We sat there back when we thought about how do we make a trailer for server recovery and stuff, and then it's like we did it for 2 reasons. And I'm going to talk a little bit here about why marketing pushes some things and doesn't push some other things. One is there's no real interesting way to show it without you've all seen the server recovery screen. You're sitting there and doing that, but also I'm just going to be real. We're only 13 minutes into it. Let's get to a real moment of truth here right now. Over the course of the 11 years I've been here, we sometimes toot the horn like we've invented something that honestly should be standard. It should be standard. It's if we were doing things different, if we had different priorities at this point or whatever, that would have just been a thing we would have had before. So we couldn't have. People
hate this, by the way, about feeling like they're always reinventing the wheel.
Server mesh. We couldn't have server recovery before because we had to. It was part of the whole nesting architecture within meshing. So we had to build an infrastructure before you could have a recovery that would bring that stuff back. So the way that we chose to do things meant that some things couldn't come till later. I mean, there's people again. We'll talk a little bit about org stuff and stuff. We still don't have orgs in our game and stuff. Those are things that are foundational that you would find in day one of other MMOs, and we're here 10 years into the PU and we still don't have it. So I want to be real clear that when we talk about this and we celebrate our achievements, and I'm really proud of our achievements this year, the stuff that Ben Watson are real. This year is a night and day difference from last year. I think anybody being real candid and honest with themselves would admit that. At the same time, I want to be candid and honest and be like, I also don't want to pretend like this was we invented the wheel and whatnot. This was the change that Chris set out for us last year. It's, hey, let's slow down, let's refocus, and let's find those things that we lost along the way and catch back up. Does that mean a slowdown on new features? Yeah, it does, and it has all year, as we said it would in February. But just a little reality check for everybody. I want you to talk about how we did it, though. We're going to spend some time. We're going to talk about freight elevators and all that stuff right now. But up here at the top, though, how did we do this change? What were the organizational changes and the operational changes that we did that made this possible and that are going to continue for the foreseeable future?
Well, so there's a series of things like company-wide that have had to change for this to happen. The first one, we talked a little bit about this in January, which was the idea of having hero cards or Joker cards, I call them, on specific issues, right? And so we've and then it was funny because people were like, give the Joker card to this other bug, right? And it's like, yeah, that's basically what we do. But we've extended that concept a bit further. And I hate that we changed the name, but we did change the name, and then we call those hero squads now. So what we've done is that we've taken a subject, for example, transit, right, which we've extensively talked about in January, and we've made a hero squad around it. So that means we've dedicated resources just to all the bugs related to one system, right? And we've changed the methodology. So the way that we used to deal with bug fixes in the past is basically engineers get the bug report, they put it in their task list. At some point, they emit the fix and they ship it in the patch. Now, as the patch release comes closer and closer, those bugs get verified and or need to be accelerated. And so it's always a bit of the fixes are valid, they're correct, but we don't have time to test them fully. We've had a lot of regressions, right? And so regression was becoming a problem because we were going too fast to try to solve some issues. And so some systems like transit are complicated enough that you can't just emit the fix.
I want to pause you there. What is regression?
Regression is when I say I fixed bug X and I've created bug Y. So it's basically when we're introducing new bugs or breaking other things because we try a fix. Okay. And so regression was a big problem on the project in general. That was in part because of the speed at which things were going, the code review process, things like this. So these hero squads, basically we flipped a bit the relationship. So we decided that fixing issues, let's say I'm going to keep transit as my hero squad example because it's an easy one to reason, but we've put resources dedicated to it. And then we got the QA teams to basically derive the priorities within the squad. So instead of saying, hey, production management is going to, drive the priorities, we got the QA leads to do that. And so now these guys were completely driven by player impact. And so when they look at issues, they're like, is this impacting players or is it a fringe issue, right? And they decided on the priority. And it turned out that priority accuracy was a lot better. And we asked those teams to be relentless into what they want to reach. And so classify the issues in order. And then the moment we get a green light from these guys, it's a celebration because they are hardcore. I've
seen a lot more Nathaniel Fisher this year than I ever saw.
The Nathaniel Fisher seal of approval is a real thing,
I think that's a big change. That's a much bigger change than it comes off as. But allowing the people this is like what people always complain about, is that it doesn't feel like the changes or the things or the decisions that CIG makes are based around them actually playing the game, because the devs may not play it. At least the QA people are playing it. They're paid to play it. We know they're playing it. They probably have at least some type of similar thoughts about the gameplay, more in common with players than with developers. So for those people to be able to have the ability to block a feature from going out, I think is actually a really, really big change for the company and probably a good move. Something that they likely couldn't do until they had enough features to be like, okay, we have enough to offer people. Because the game's only recently got enough stuff together, I think, to make for multiple interesting game loops.
I want to inject. Brunks76 says, Benoit is wrong. Regression is when old issues resurface.
Yes, that's also a definition that works. But we use the same word for both at CIG. But you're kind of correct. The proper definition is that's an old issue that comes back. But in this case, the thing is the issues are so close by, and typically it is resurfacing an original issue. That's actually one of the issues with those big systems, is that bug reports are so similar, but are sometimes completely different circumstances. But
yeah, two things, three things, four things that all cause the same outcome.
Same symptom. Yeah, exactly.
So hero push squads. We got Correct. That. The embedded green light is what you just got done talking about. Letting QA sort of manage their priorities and green light things.
No, that one's a bit of a separate one actually.
Right.
So the hero squads is really about getting our QA team to drive the priority on a specific subject and drive down, right? One of the change in methodology for the devs on those team is like a bit of a change in approach. We in code review for these in these hero squad, we no longer just accept the fix based on code change. We ask the developer to explain what the problem is. Can you reason at why this is happening? Second, propose a change, right? And then the leads can validate this change before we start even writing any code for it. And then we verify the change with QA. And then that's when we actually allow the change to come into the stream at all, right? So we do a lot more work before the work is actually started, a lot more work before validation before it actually gets submitted. And so on those teams, like developers working on those hero push squads have a much more methodology to apply to solve that, because basically in the past the regression rate was too high.
Right.
And so the big advantage of that setup is that those teams are faster to react because they're dedicated on one subject. And so if there is a regression, because they still happen, they're faster to pick it up. But then the fixes are slower to put in. But that still has been very effective. So Transit is one of our hero push squads, which to me has been kind of successful since the beginning of the year. Like I think the transit system, we're going to talk a bit more about it later. It's in a much better shape. The embedded green light is what you just talked about, which is that was a major organizational change. And so in the past, the way that game devs at CIG on Star Citizen would work is that they would submit in tests later. And now, that sounds crazy, but it is what it is. It was what it was. And so at the beginning of the year, we set to completely change this. And so we added this embedded green light process. So what is an embedded? So embeddeds are QA testers that are embedded in a dev team. So it's not, everybody has a view of like there's a floor of QA people, and then they receive a build and they test the build and stuff like that, right? But there's another class of testers that are embedded in teams, and they become specialists in what that team is doing, right? So, if you have an embedded tester in the FPS weapon team, those people know all about FPS weapons, how to test them, what change affect what, and so they can judge what they have to test. So the embedded green light is we gave that team the power to red light any change before it's submitted. And so that's a big culture shift, because it used to be hot and fast, get it in, we'll test and fix later, right? If there's issues, and we trust devs, to we don't trust. Literally,
it was constantly that. So many of the features that we got added to the game in 3.x don't get used because it was just like, make sure the feature works, which I get. As an alpha, you just want to try and get features into the game to make sure they work and they can be used with the game. But at the same time, a lot of them also just didn't get integrated, really. Push and pull functionality, for instance. Obviously, it's important to the game, functionality that they want to make sure works. But there were no reasons to do it for anybody who was playing the game. You could kind of RP some stuff and push around some dollies and things like that, but you didn't need to. You could also say the same thing for the racing rework that came to Grimhex, where they redid the whole Grimhex area in anticipation of being a location that might host races. It did host races, but those races never used that location for anything, so it was kind of unintegrated and thus felt a little bit forgotten, I guess. The cargo deck on space stations is another one. The mounted gun that they post outside of bunkers is another one. Just things that clearly do need to work for the game, but got added in a way that felt like it was okay that they might have been whimsical and worked a little bit flimsy as long as they were in the game, and they were never really touched on again, because it was just okay, it's in. Let's move on to the next thing. Let's keep going. And honestly, that was how they kept people excited. That's how they kept us interested in the game. Things are different. I keep saying things are super different now, but when you look at the way that CIG acts and what they're clearly prioritizing to keep people interested in the game, it's so much different. It's no longer about what features they're working on and what exciting new thing they're going to add in the next patch. Now, it's all about what is the story? What is the content? What armor are you going to be able to get? What weapons can you unlock? Are there new missions being added? It's a lot more focused. It's more tangible now, which is good, but not all good. Obviously, I think there are strengths to move fast and break things, keep adding features. I hope we go back to that to an extent, because we do need to start seeing features come back in. But this idea of making sure it all integrates and actually works properly, I'm glad that they've reached a point where they feel like they can do that more consistently.
Devs. We need to verify. We need to check it, right? And the whole point of this was to hit on regression or side effects, right? Because our rate of regression and side effects was extremely high, right?
I want to I'm just picturing the comments. Somebody can screenshot Benoit and say, Benoit by Azure 2025, we don't trust devs. Go ahead. Right there. Do it right there. Right there.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we've had embedded QA for years. This was about empowering them, in order to be a bulwark against letting this stuff through. Another new term I heard this year, hygiene initiatives. Now, when I heard this was coming up, I thought it was something else. Anybody that's worked in a game studio knows that every once in a while there's that desk you walk by and you're like, I thought I knew what this was about. It wasn't what I thought it was about. Right. What are hygiene initiatives?
So this is not about BO, if that's what you're referring to. But hygiene is a collection of initiatives related to cleaning up errors, logs, and in general, just reports we get from the game engine that can signify errors or not. So if anybody's ever opened a console in Star Citizen,
enjoy the chair stream for a bit. I'll be right back, guys.
What the hell's going on, right? Because there's tons of messages going through, all kinds of stuff. Well, that's what hygiene is meant to clean up in a way, right? Now, these things will take us a long time to clean up, algorithmically, but we do have the same problem of signal to noise ratio in other areas. So, like when environment artists are working in the editor, they get level warnings, right? Well, there's a ton of those warnings that are either irrelevant, asserts, warnings, right, and errors. And so the issue is, level artist is going to get some warning. He's like, can I do anything about this, right? Oh, there's 50,000 of them. Probably I don't have to worry about this, right? The reality is one of those is actually an issue, right? And so the hygiene initiatives is like a collection of things that we need to change in how we build the game to clean up these things so that the errors are meaningful. We have the same thing on the data core side. So for those who don't know the game data, so all the records we use to configure, the components or all the game data, right, just stored in a database called data core. And there's a ton of errors in data core that are reported, schema violation, things like that. That they're not fatal errors, but they're still there, and we allow them to be there, and that's historical in the past. And so the hygiene initiative is a means for us to reach zero errors in those areas, so that we can then prevent them from even being submitted in the first place. So hygiene is basically pre-submit verification on things and concerted efforts to solve these things so that we can be in a clean house. It's like we want to clean the house, right? So that we can do better.
Somebody in the chat was saying, I missed it, the name. It said errors that should be warnings that should be infos.
Yeah. Bad classifications of things. So we even have now systems put in place in the assert dialogues and that pop up so that you can report a bad error.
You report a bad error?
Literally, now we get reports for bad errors so that devs can go in and fix the wording or change the severity or things like this.
And there was something we did so that certain teams, if the pop-up was directly related to them, they couldn't just dismiss it and continue with their work?
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So I feel like an AI when I say that now. You're absolutely right. But we changed the way the assert dialogues work. So asserts, for those who don't know, is like when I'm a programmer and I'm asserting in an area of the code that this value must be set to 1. That means that if the value comes in and it's not 1, then we'll have an error, right? That will show up. That's the assert error. And typically, you need to action asserts, right? And so, or something else is going to go wrong. And so historically, the assert dialog was just a global thing. And then we still have those get assigned to dev teams. So they are classified by code owners and by dev team. And so you can know if it's an audio assert or if it's a programming assert or whatever, which is great. But we allowed people to ignore those either completely or just skip them, right? And on the other hand, when you're actually testing the game or playing the game, you get these asserts, so you want to ignore them because you're doing something else. You're not in assert fixing mode. And so what we've changed the relationship towards assert inside the company so that now you can ignore errors for any other team but yours. So if you get an assert error, you need to fix it. That's it, right? There's just no, because the thing that we were seeing in the company was like basically teams going like, oh, when are these, I'm going to pick on audio, but sorry, Graham and team, I'm not picking on you guys, it's just random. But like, when are the audio guys going to fix their asserts, right? Whereas the reality is like we all have our own asserts to fix, and so we changed that relationship as well. Yeah,
it's again over years and years you get this mentality. So it's like I just need to do my work, and the game is telling me there's an error, there's an assert for some unrelated thing. Like what I'm working on doesn't have anything to do with that. Doesn't have anything to do with that. So you smash it. You smash it. It's just like selecting all cookies because GDRP made the rule that now everybody's got to announce their cookies on your website. Now I just accept all of them. All you've done is you've made me hit a button. We get in this habit of hitting button and people, and this is one of those things like people. We're admitting this here, guys. Talking about, where's open development? I'm like, well, we're sitting here saying that too many people got in the habit of clicking the button.
We've even found some. I'm not going to blame anybody, but we've got analytics inside the company, so we know who's putting asserts off, right? So we found some shit.
Paul Rendell, I miss you. I'm just kidding. That's certainly not fair.
Paul's a good guy.
No, he's
Paul's
a good guy.
He's the one putting the shit in.
I didn't know he was here either. I ran into him today. He gave me a hug. I'm like, oh, I didn't know I was on hugging terms with Paul Rendell. That's nice. All right, so we've talked hero push squads. We've talked embedded green light. We've talked these hygiene initiatives that all help the way in which we make the game and make the patch and make our content and stuff. We also started an initiative. I want to keep this under organizational stuff, but tell me if I'm wrong. The stability score things. Talk to me about our internal stability scores and how we've determining them and how we're using them.
Yeah. So stability score is, I don't think we've ever discussed this publicly.
No, I don't think so.
So we have this measure, which is an indication that we use, and the team that actually comes up with this would already tell you it's alchemy, right? Like it's not an exact science, but it does give us a pretty good idea. So we try to establish a stability score for every build, right? We actually auto-calculate it based on the data that we get.
Not patch, every build.
Every build, yeah, every build. So like we send a build to PTU, or QA or staging environments or whatever, and we always have a stability score that's calculated over time. And so what the stability score is, I don't want to go into the alchemy of it, but we're trying to figure out basically the stability of the environment. And so if you're connected to a game server and you get disconnected, we're going to count that, right? Now, the reason for your disconnection will be used as part of that. How long the build has been running is also part of that equation, and the concurrency of it is also part of it. And so with this black magic numbers, right, we basically get a score out of it. And the score is one thing. Now we've put labels on it. So we used to use the score internally as just a number, like, oh, it's a 0.0, and it's a 0.08 build, and then at some point, I got a bit fed up with that because I'm like, what does that mean? And so the values for this are optimal, excellent, stable, unstable, volatile, crippled, or critically unstable. So that's the range, right? So we go from optimal, which is great, stability score, to critically unstable, right? And all of the thing in between, right? And this is based on, all the stats that we get, and we kind of auto-calculate it. Now, we still have Jeffrey Pease, our internal alchemist, always, playing around with these numbers or adjusting the score, telling us how bad we're doing it. But it is actually pretty accurate in terms of like what the perceived stability will be from a player's perspective. And so if I compare, what was September 11th last year? Was it like 323 or maybe 4 at that point, right? 323 or 4, I forget which one. I would say like the stability score for 323X was probably in the kind of unstable range, right?
Okay.
That would be a normal range for the 3.2x, this kind of thing, right? So the stability score, server score for 4.30, for example, is between optimal and excellent. And so that means the rate of server crashes and disconnections overall is really good. Now, this score is not just server crashes, right? It's also client crashes or client disconnection, right? So if everybody gets disconnected because one of our cloud routers dies, then the stability score of the build will be terrible, even though the servers are up and they're running real fine, right? So it kind of encompasses everything. We're trying to get one number for all of it.
What?
Stability score is an interesting one because I bet anybody in their right mind would not have thought there was a stability score, at least up until this year. And I can't get over that. I can't get over how much this game has changed while our mindsets are still kind of catching up. Not to say that they're running perfectly. I feel like every time I talk about this, it comes off like I am praising this for being one of the most stable experiences or something, but I'm more speaking comparatively. A stability score, I wouldn't have even thought they were really considering that during the 3.x updates. So
For 318.
That was critically unstable. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because actually the server, if you just took the server score for 318, it wasn't that bad, but it's everything before it. That's why it was so critical in the 318 areas. It's because it was really a massive backend.
That's what I'm saying. He's like, wait, did he say it wasn't so bad?
That's why it was so critical in the 318 areas. It's because it was really a massive backend.
Oh, it was critical in 318. Yeah, before 318, we were actually fairly solid. But even at that point, I don't think anybody would say that the game was as solid as it is now, as stable. Before 318, you could play and not have as many crashes. In between 318 and 4.0, there were a lot of crashes, right? But if you were not in the game before 318, then you might not know that we just had this general period of the game acted okay. And it would be patch by patch. You'd tell yourself, is this a good patch or should I skip this quarter? 317, great time, because they just stayed on the same code base for like 3 quarters. 3.12 time period, pretty solid. Honestly, I don't remember any other specific patches that were really good besides those. But again, playing Star Citizen during the 3.x period of time was so much more hit or miss than it is now. And that's not to say, like, they have removed missions and content that we used to have from what we have now in the 4.x era. Man, but the reliability, whew, it's going to be funny to look back on even now, you know, when the game finally is in a better place, or it's finally ready to release, or whatever you want to call it. We'll look back even on this time period and be like, man, remember when you just wouldn't want to do anything in game because you didn't know if you'd have that ship in the next update? Or you didn't know if you were going to fall out of your spaceship? That's still a problem that we kind of deal with. It's nice to think about those times, but honestly, when you reach those times, it's really easy to forget about how bad it was prior to that.
Problem at the time. So yeah, let's not talk about that. We're past that now. But
the two things we don't talk about: that damn holiday live stream and Alpha 318.
That's right.
At least Alpha 318 had to happen. At least that had to happen in order to get everything that came after it. There was nothing about the holiday live stream that needed to happen. So,
you don't want the makeup? Let's go back with the makeup. Okay. So yeah, so that's the stability score, right? So that's an interesting measure, and I mean that proves that we've kind of really improved the crash rate on game servers. So the server errors that you get now, we need to do more on the stability score, because with static server meshing, even the stability score is sometimes skewed. We have run into area local crashes that would crash loop a server, right, nonstop, and so that really contributes badly to the overall score of the build.
Yeah, we've had that. We've definitely had that this year. It's really interesting though that one part of the game can be crashing while other parts are still working.
It's one area, so you know, we're discussing how we can do more territory-based scoring as well, so that we can get a better idea. So basically, what I'm saying is we can't get an actual just single number for all of the stability stuff. There's always some factors that, you know, we've had AMD drivers or NVIDIA drivers issues that affect stability scores in some builds, and so. Yeah.
So how do we use that to determine whether a build goes live? Like, is there this? I see these. I see an aspect. Let's just pull the curtain way back. Why not?
Yeah.
I see the question. Is it worse than what's on live now? I see this question come up a lot in internal conversations. When, let's just be real. If we try to wait for everything to always be optimal, we release very few things.
Correct.
That's
the nature of shipping a game as in development.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here try to hide or pretend otherwise. But so we know that not everything is going to be optimal. But where do we draw that line? How do we draw that line? And is it more than just, is it worse than what's currently on live?
No, we always try to shoot for better than live, right? When we can. But there's a lot of things that we look at to be able to ship a patch, right? Now, obviously, for this year, it was a very big change for the development teams, because moving to a 4-week cycle means that we are always shipping. Like, you know, how we have a ship date, right, that we give ourselves, and a schedule, and then we've got our gate reviews, and everything is like chained up to get there. Well, the closer you get to this date, right, when you get from the player's perspective, when you guys see like daily PTUs go, and it's always update, that's because we're getting close to the release, right? And so we're trying to get to the date, and we're trying to validate all the things we need to validate as fast as possible. The focus is really on shipping. So even minor issues become top priority, right? And so it's been really difficult for the teams this year to keep up with this, because we finished the patch like, yay, okay, we're late for the gate review. Like literally, you know, it's going like this. And obviously we balance this across multiple teams, but there are teams.
Yeah, this is a really important. Maybe I'll let them finish.
Unfortunately, are, you know, they're on.
That's kind of a Kanye move, huh?
And so they're always on it.
Yeah, Benoit, you're good, but I'm gonna let you finish and I'll talk about it. No, I just wanted to double down on what he's saying, and we've seen a lot of signs now this year during Star Citizen Lives, during interviews and stuff, that the pace that they've set for this year is too much. It's too fast. It's funny because Chris Roberts, back in the day, I bet you I can find the reference to this. Let me think. Pretty sure it's on the Kickstarter, actually. Kickstarter page. You go back to this and all the stupid little promises that he was putting out there that, you know, some of them, they definitely come to fruition in some cases, but like, I'm of the mindset that a lot of the promises didn't need to be promised at this point. But if you search for 2 weeks, week. No? Update? Maybe? Back here, I believe he was talking about, here we go. We're not interested in having yearly updates. Once live, we will have a team of people adding content on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Now, I don't know. I'm not a MMO connoisseur. Okay, I don't know how MMOs deliver content. I don't know how live services game delivers content. How many times a year does Fortnite put a new skin in? I don't know. 2 weeks though, every week or two seems like a really, really high level of activity. So I don't think that's going to happen. But even now, with this sort of monthly patch, and yes, this is during the time that 2 games are getting made and they're still kind of in the alpha phase and all that stuff, caveats aside, the rate that they're working at right now is so fast. We on the outside can barely keep up with it, right? We can barely keep up with what patches in PTU and what's actually supposed to be tested soon. And I don't think it's a bad thing per se. I think it's really worked out for them this year. If there's any indication of that, then it is probably their funding, which is 41.6% higher than it was at this time last year, which last year was 1,001% short of their all-time funding goals. Dude, I can't believe it sometimes. I'm sitting here making content for this game, talking about it, and I still cannot believe that they can pull that off. But yeah, I think the monthly updates has definitely helped their funding a lot. Keeping the game solid has helped their funding a lot, but I don't think it's something that they're going to be able to keep up for a long time. I think we're like in this stage of Star Citizen's development where Squadron 42 is at like 100% effort and Star Citizen is at like 50-60% effort or whatever. There's a balance there, and at some point Squadron has to drop down so that Star Citizen can take more of that precedent. And at that point I expect there to be a lot more stuff coming into Star Citizen, but I really don't expect it to be like this. It feels like they're in emergency mode almost. You know? It feels like 2025 is like their weird year. I'm hoping 2026 isn't also a weird year, but I think it will be. I think 2026, if Jared is coming out in this very Star Citizen Live, Jared says, we're still working on Squadron 42 for 2026. We don't know if we're going to make it, but we're working towards it. And that statement of we don't know if we're going to make it has put a lot of uncertainty in a lot of people's minds. But I think that uncertainty also kind of means that next year might also be a crunch year for them in Squadron. So maybe we see, again, another year where they pick this sort of weird, we're not putting a ton of developmental engineering effort into Star Citizen, but we are putting a lot of effort into creating a whole bunch of updates for it, which means content deliveries, which does mean high pace, which, like he's saying right here, does mean the possibility of, yeah, as is mentioned in chat, burnout on the devs that are working on that stuff. It means backers and people who are playing the game getting a little bit, over the way that they're handling this, which is ship sales, content drops, and bug fixes as opposed to forward feature development. They run a lot of risks here, and I don't envy the position they're in. I think that we don't get to hear just how intensely intense things are at CIG. I think that this has been like one of the most nail-biting years for CIG in their entire history, if I'm being honest. But it's hard to know that from the outside. I'm just judging from things that developers have said, which is, for instance, like the audio people mentioned that they needed to get audio work done for Rain so that they could get Rain into 4.2. It wasn't because they were naturally working on Rain audio. They saw that there was an update coming out and they said, okay, we got to pivot to work on that. And how that proliferates throughout the company can have a big effect on the company's morale, on how it's functioning, how it flows. So I am interested in seeing how they come out of this year. They've been doing very, very well in terms of funding and even in terms of new members. It's easy to forget that like a game's popularity is also pretty important to how it's doing. Look at where they are. Look at where the freaking they are, dude. I can't believe it. It's not even just the same people spending more money. There are more people still joining than last year. I can believe it because the game's going better off. Okay, I'll give them credit where credit's due. It's still surprising to me because while the game is better than it was last year, it's still not in the place where I would expect people to be jumping in constantly. And for them to be almost on par with 2023, they're behind. They're not where they were at the beginning of September right now. So they're about a month behind 2023. But look at the overall balance of the years, guys. 2022 was a freaking crazy year. I've talked about that many times on the stream. A lot of big YouTubers touched on Star Citizen for the first time that year. And what else happened? I think May was just a really big time for the game. Yeah, 2022 May. I know Jack Frags was doing videos. Level Cap got more into it. And it just got a lot of buzz. So a lot of people joined. But yeah, I'm genuinely surprised that they're doing this year on this good on player numbers. It really, I guess, goes to show that if you're putting out constant content and something is relatively playable, people want to play it. A live services game success depends on the quality of the updates and how often people can push them. And CIG's pushing them 12 times a year this year, 11 times, 10 times a year. I don't think it's sustainable, but it's worked for them. And my whole point here is just that they keep putting these little signs out there that what they're doing is definitely stressing the company. And so I'm super curious as to what happens over the next 6 months or so to see, are they going to settle into a more relaxed cadence where they're focusing more on feature pushes, or are they going to keep this one update a month stuff going? Whatever messaging they send to us in January or February of next year is going to be some of the most important messaging they've ever put out. Can you ship Squadron that year? Oh my God. Imagine if they come out in January and they're like, after a month of planning for Squadron 42 and Star Citizen development, we have discovered that Squadron 42 will release in March of 2027. Yeah, dude. I don't know. As somebody who covers this and has covered this every day for years, it's kind of an anomaly the way that this project goes. I can't obviously speak towards other projects as much with depth, but I don't see any of your games doing this kind of stuff in terms of kickstarting and crowdfunding. And I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm saying it's different. It's hard to figure out what the hell's going on with Star Citizen. It's weird.
Unfortunately, they're on everything, and so they're always on it.
Yeah, I think it gets lost sometimes. Of the many things we
Space Tomato
changed
guy was doing videos too. Absolutely.
8 or 9 patches this year.
Yeah.
It depends on whether you count what happened in April as a patch or not. But we've shipped at least 8 patches this year. And in years past, from the 3.0 era on, it was 4 a year. If we were like some 1 or 2 years, we only hit 3 and whatever. And now we've done 8 in this year. The velocity change has been tremendous. Tremendous. And it's helped, if I may, it's helped expose aspects of this. And when I say this, I mean making all of this. It's helped expose aspects of this that we're pretty good at, and it's helped expose aspects of this that we still struggle with and still need to improve.
It's kind of like what I was just saying. A little bit.
What you were saying just really hit home with that. We're in the process now of discussing adjusting the patch cadence for 2026. It's way too early to give any details on that. Nothing's decided. Yeah. But yes, this has been a pretty relentless pace. And there's a patch coming out in September. There'll be a patch coming out in October. There'll be a patch coming out in November, and then there'll be a patch coming out in December. So it's certainly a year unlike any other.
Now, one of the things we didn't discuss about for this, in order to reach the stabilities, there's also internal stability, right? That comes into play with this.
I'm not familiar with internal stability. I've never had any myself.
Well, so this one is a bit more subjective because we don't specifically have a score for it. But if I go back to last year, right, the way we would develop the game, and I don't want to go too deep in the discussion about source control and streams and all that stuff because that's just a rabbit hole. But in general, when we work, we have a mainstream where we work in, right? In the past, this was a melting pot of everything. So core technology, editor, toolings, audio teams, content teams, gameplay teams, art, everything, right, in one stream, right? And the fallout from that is that you go a bit faster because you're building things, you're improving the tools as you're improving the gameplay, as you're improving everything. But the reality is, we also had major internal stability issues, which is, imagine that you're an environment artist, you show up at work, you make your little coffee, you pull the morning build, you're like, all right, I'm ready to work on my ASD mission today. It's going to be super cool. Editor crash, right? And now, oh yeah, the team's already on it. We're fixing it, but you just lost 2 hours. Right?
Yep.
And so we had major issues with this, right? And so when we started the year last year, when we did the show, just after the show, I think we went and finished this new branching strategy where all of the patches this year have come out of the same stream that we call SC patch. And
for reference, that's kind of what happened with 3.17. Everything after 3.16 was on that same stream. That's why it ended up being so stable.
This patch receives almost no technology update.
Yep.
It's basically us saying we can do this content with no new engine tech. No editor update, no tooling update, nothing. Right now, that's not to say we're not touching the engine. We've fixed bugs, we've improved stability. But we bring these things, embedded green light, full verification, tooling check before they go in. And so it's really about moving all these checks beforehand so that we don't destabilize the content teams who are they're under the gun all the time to produce the stuff that they have to, and we don't want to slow them down. And so that's another reason for why the stability is better. It's because we're also not introducing massively breaking changes in the engine that we didn't need to debug at patch time, right? And so that's been a big helper on stability at the cost of features, right? That was the whole point of the year, really, so far.
And now we're changing some of that with tech preview. I want to hit one more thing before we go into tech preview and stuff. Features are going to begin. Yes, Virginia, it's true. Features are going to begin appearing again in. I won't say the word soon, but they're coming. Before I get to tech preview, because that was a really good transition into tech preview, but I want to touch on one more thing. You mentioned the rise in session length.
Yep.
So this is one of those metrics that we've talked a lot about. We're 40 minutes in.
Yeah, the sacrifice they've taken to get here is kind of what he keeps bringing up, is the features. And it will be interesting to see if they can return to a heavy dose of feature development without returning to also the instability of Star Citizen when they were focusing on features. I do think the EPTU will help with that, the experimental test preview, whatever you want to call it. But we do need to see that using more effectively than we have throughout the year. The Vulkan stuff is good. We need to see it in engineering. We need to see stuff like FPS scanning go in there, crafting based building. Like, that should be a consistent thing. And I think people are still waiting to get more of their confidence that the EPTU can keep the game both stable and working on features while we continue to play this more playable version they've made this year.
You've mentioned a lot of things that have probably never been said on a single development show before.
What's up, Todd?
Podcast, or whatever the heck you want to call this. We don't have to talk about session length. The amount of people who are logging in. You hear about concurrency. Steam has concurrency numbers and stuff, but session length is a super important metric for stability and for enjoyment of the product and stuff. Just talk to me about session length, how it's determined, other than just, hey, that's how long the person's in there, why it's important, and what's happened to that over the last 9 months.
Well, so, let's say the session length is calculated by you joining a game server.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Spicy SCO7 says 40 minutes in, said virtually nothing.
Okay.
Yeah, I stopped the whole show.
Sure.
Stop the whole show for that. Continue, Benoit.
I was saying the session length is calculated when you connect a game shard, right? So sitting on the main menu doesn't count, right? It's really when you're actually actively connected to a game server, and obviously it ends when you disconnect. So that sounds like a simple metric, and it kind of is, but it's very important because it gives you an idea of, like, you can have very high concurrency and a very short session length, and that means that's a terrible patch. It means people are going in. Let's talk about the patch we should not talk about. When you would get in game, if you could get in game, and then can't get out of bed, Alt F4, end of session. Super high concurrency, but very low session length. And so the session length is a bit of an indicator of the quality of the game, but also of the desire of the player to keep playing the game. And so the longer the session length, it typically means that, hey, the content's being engaged with, players are playing the game, blah blah blah. Now, I'm sure, some people go out in deep space and they mine, and that's it. And they can mine for hours and they pull the average up. Other players, go PvP for a couple minutes, and then they exit, and then, they drive the average down. But overall, the session length is it's always a metric that we look at as a secondary metric to look at the quality of this. And so the session length has more than doubled since the 3.x era. of the game easily, right? And obviously, in the case of server recovery, your session continues, and so that helps quite a bit, because before it would cut the session in half. So there's other factors that contribute to it, but that's why it's an important one.
Okay, so now I want to talk about tech preview. So we used tech preview when we launched 4.0. Technically, 4.0 didn't launch until end of January this year. That's when it went to live. It was on tech preview at the end of last year. And we made these statements that we were going to use tech preview in order to bring these new things in and maintain the stability of live. It took 8 months. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we did a tech preview between January and late August, early September. Yeah. And now we're using them for the Vulkan stuff and the graphic stuff. Talk to me about tech preview, why we're doing it, how it's working, and let's just start there. I'll follow up when you're done.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's start with we didn't have tech previews in, let's say, April of last year, right? We started this idea of having tech previews last year, right? So it's a new kind of tool that we have. And obviously, we use tech previews in the server meshing lead up, right? To validate key assumptions, to actually isolate the testing. If you remember when we did the major technical previews on the 3x branch for server meshing, it was taking the actual previous build with server meshing technology. So uninfluenced by new code, uninfluenced by the current patch, something we know is kind of in a stable range that we can use to test the technology alone, right? It's also a way to de-risk, just again bringing that in the stream and then going Cortez maneuver. Now we're stuck with it. We're moving forward, but and so the tech preview has been invaluable for that, and especially for the server meshing project, that's been a super important tool, because we just don't have always the ability to replicate what players are going to do, and to be honest, even with bots and virtual players and whatever, it's never the same than 4,000 players filling ships with hot dogs.
And right now,
Anon, thanks for gifting out that sub over to Tavex.
So this tech preview that we're bringing in is more than that, actually, like behind the scenes, right? This is literally, I told you about SC Patch. So all the patches this year have been coming from SC Patch. The tech preview contains all changes that we've brought to our mainstream. This is where engine development happens. This is also where we bring back some technology from Squadron 42 back into Star Citizen. And we are moving all of this together up to SC Patch. So this will now become, when we're happy with all the testing that we got through on this, and it checks all the green lights, this will become the new baseline from which we build patches. And so right now, this includes, about 8 to 9 months of graphics changes, right, which have not seen the public yet. And so a lot of Vulkan changes, obviously, to the great pleasure of our great Ali Brown, who really wants us to finalize this merge so that we can bring this into players. And there's some great stuff in there. So a lot of Vulkan optimization.
Dude, to get an idea of how much Ali Brown probably wants this to be just done, check this out. Gen 12 Vulkan Star Citizen. You look up this video. CitizenCon 2021, folks. 4 freaking years ago. This guy was sitting on camera telling us where he wanted to go with the Vulkan API and the new graphics updates. 4 years ago.
So after Gen 12, I just briefly wanted to touch on what comes next for the graphics team. So a lot of Gen 12 has been focused on CPU performance. So after Gen 12, we really want to start looking at the GPU performance. The first few things we'd look at here were things that wouldn't change the visuals, just improve the frame rate. Things like DLSS, FSR, async compute, and variable rate shading. After we've improved this GPU performance, we want to start looking at some of the more exciting visual features. So then there is also mesh shaders and primitive shaders, which is technology we can use to generate procedural geometry. And this type of thing could be really exciting for things like the planets or asteroid fields, where procedural geometry is critical. And then there's the big one, ray tracing. We're very excited to get onto ray tracing, especially to use it for lighting, such as global illumination, but also reflections and shadow quality. There's a lot of exciting areas for us to look into. And
they were very excited 4 years ago, man. Can you imagine how much they want this push to just go into the game so they can move on to the important stuff? This was like one of the most dry talks I've ever watched. It's insightful and it is informing, and it explains the whole idea of how rendering technology is going to work in Star Citizen. Oh my God, but I can't imagine having worked on this for all this time and you're still like, please just put it in the game. Just make it work.
Vulkan changes, but also in a way for us to test all of these changes that we've been doing to the core engine rendering outside of the lab, because we have a graphics lab internally that we test on, but it never, there's never anything like shipping it to players and having all the different kinds of hardwares and configs and settings and driver versions that we need. And so the majority of the stuff in this tech preview is player facing, but there's a ton of back-end tooling that comes with that. A major update to the editor with some new, material edition systems and light group systems that are, in dire need of coming in, and a major upgrades to our scripting system that power missions, which the mission teams are, Elliot and his team are like, when is it going to be done?
For that, yeah, no.
Yes.
That's. I'm glad you brought that up because I'd actually forgotten that. That underneath that, it looks like it's just for the graphics, everything. But yes, no, the mission, we call it Mission 2.0. We call it a couple different things internally, but they are chomping at the. You already said that. I'm reusing the same. Sorry, I saw a comment from Salty and Mike that said, "Talk about session girth," and I laughed and wasn't listening to anything you were saying for like 30 seconds.
Okay,
because
cool.
It's a good joke.
It's a good joke.
Session girth,
it was a good joke.
Now, to be clear, on the mission tooling there, right? This is
Also, talk about the session refactory period.
part of Mission 2.0. It's a prerequisite, but it's not the Mission 2.0 system. That's a much larger endeavor that we're still on. But this time it's tooling, right? So if some players are tech savvy here, it's basically a visual scripting system that we're upgrading massively, which was, I think we've demoed this years ago at this point, but it's called the Subsumption at the time, and it's now called StarScript. And so the StarScript system is basically taking the tooling that the teams are using now and making it much more reliable, robust with syntax checking, error checking, validation, auto layout, stuff like that the teams really need to build more quality missions.
I'm sorry, let me get this straight. You took a new feature set and you took the base word for it and then added star in front of it and called it that?
No, we renamed Subsumption, which was the original name, and then we put star in front of it. Yeah, exactly.
Starsumption.
That's right.
Dude, I honestly, I can't tell. I can't tell if they're doing it. I can't tell if they're doing it ironically or not. I'm serious, guys. I talked to one of them, and the way that they talked about the whole adding star thing made it sound like it was tongue-in-cheek, but not a single time have they introduced any of these things and been like, ha ha ha, we're naming this Star. They just like very seriously announced that these things are called StarScript and Starchitect and Star Audio, Star Me. I keep thinking that their character creator should be called Star Me. It's just a big Pokemon stan.
All right, we're going with it. I'm rolling with it.
As long as
originally it seemed like a joke
every time you do it.
But now
this tech preview is obviously important. It'll be in tech preview for as long as it needs to be in order to.
It is funny as a joke.
Up and then
I'm just gonna
become the new
imagine it's still a joke.
Create our patches from. What is the next tech preview? Go ahead, say it.
Well, so what's behind this, right? This enables us to bring in, I'm going to go back to streaming just to build the excitement. No, I'm joking. So off of our main technology stream is another feature that's been built there that needs all of this to work, and that's the engineering gameplay tech preview. That's right behind it. So the moment we can bring in the base tech preview changes, then we'll be able to do to run the next testing on engineering gameplay straight off of that patch. So that's going to be super interesting.
Yeah, so I want to be real clear with that. This is the next set of tech previews. This is. I want to go ahead and say, and I'm going to go ahead and say it so that if people get angry at me and not you. Right now we're using tech preview to test Vulkan and these and all these graphical stuff and all these mission changes and everything underneath and stuff like this. When this is done and get fully integrated, go to live and whatnot, the next thing is engineering. We desperately, I'm going to use the word desperately. We desperately want this tech preview with engineering out before the end of the year. Now,
Jared, you don't know the definition of desperate. We will literally shitpost on Reddit, all right? That's how intense it is now. You can't hold us from engineering any longer. Can I show you guys the introduction to this? Because it's really not hard to find. Star Citizen Interface Showcase. I know the literal Jaredified name for the Inside Star Citizen episode because I've looked this thing up so much. Interface Showcase. And I'm on the wrong YouTube channel, so I'm getting ads. For the dead Destiny. Look at this. This is engineering.
Have a fuel tank, a battery.
If you're part of this channel, if you've been around here, if you've been hanging out,
sabotaged automatically,
then you've probably seen this more times than you wish. You probably also know the name of this episode at this point. But this was the original engineering showcase. This was the first time we ever saw the work they were doing on this. And my friends, this was October of 2020. We've been watching engineering in development in different ways for 5 years. We are all desperate. Although I I'll take the back seat and probably say that the people who are working on it likely want it to be out more than
I'm going
we
to use
do.
the word desperately. We desperately want this tech preview with engineering out before the end of the year. Now, this is the middle of September. It's still October, November, December. That's still a lot of time. It's not any time when anybody would say soon. And that's no guarantee that we're even going to hit it. We've all been here. Somebody was joking, hey, drink it next time Jared says how long he's been here. Well, we've all been here. Lots of us. I've recognized some of these names for the whole time I've been here. We've all been here long enough to know that me saying it's our intention to get this before the end of the year is not the same as saying it will come before the end of the year. Just being honest with you here. But it is everybody's desperate intention to get this thing into tech preview at the end of the year. We want it. We need it. We're tired. We did.
And I know I'm talking a lot. All right, I'm pausing a lot in this episode. That's why we're going to do this in parts. But I'm putting out a video this week, and I just kind of want to get ahead of it because I know some people are going to find problems with it. In this video, I throw doubt on the 2027, 2028 dates for Star Citizen. I throw heavy doubt on it. I basically say there's no chance. And part of that is the feature development, the amount of features that we still need in this game to not just work, but also interweave with the other features, to interface with the game overall, is hefty. And to look at the way that things are going right now with engineering, I think could give us some insight into that. If you go to the July monthly report, you'll see some talk about engineering and the progress that they're making on it. And it's good talk. It's definitely stuff that got us excited, but the specific words they use, I'll read it for you. July saw engineering gameplay enter tech preview preparation, with the devs moving the code into a new staging system. Now, that one sentence means that at this point, the EPTU is starting to be considered. They're actually going to deliver us the features of engineering to test in the tech preview, not in live, but in this tech preview they're talking about. And the fact that they are doing that preparation in July, meanwhile, though, in September, Jared is still saying this.
As saying it will come before the end of the year. Just being honest with you here. But it is everybody's desperate intention to get this thing into tech preview at the end of the year. We want it.
That means I hate extrapolating, and nothing is ever the same. Every situation is different. But that would be a 5-month window of preparing for the tech preview, right? Not even preparing for the live game, preparing for the tech preview to maybe make it in. Now, engineering's a really big system, one of the biggest in the game. It connects to a lot of stuff. It touches a lot of stuff. So this could be a unique situation. But if we look at the way that engineering is moving its way into tech preview and how long it's taking, then we extrapolate that out to all the other features: base building, crafting, the economic simulation, Maelstrom, refining gameplay, whatever exploration gameplay ends up being. Yeah, I know. Data hauling, passenger transport. The things that are on the roadmap for 1.0, I actually think passenger transport, yeah, it's on there. All of those things also need to go into the tech preview. So I'm like, next year is going to be really important for them to set expectations for what their actual pace is in getting these features into the game. Because if we're going off of 2025, which is all about playability, it's not about features. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt there. But if we go off of this 5 months to get from tech preview prep to tech preview, and then however long to get from tech preview to live, makes me feel like 2028 sounds a little bit ambitious for the whole game. We'll see. Again, they're focusing on playability this year, so it might change. But I want, like, that's the caveat. I want to be out there when people experience the video I'm putting out this week, which is like kind of throwing some cold water on that expectation.
We need it. We're tired. We did 5-6 stories in engineering. I did like 2 or 3 citizen cons with engineering. Like, it's time. 300, kick that mother out on the tech preview, please.
Hell yeah.
So we're trying. But
Here.
I just want to make sure that everybody's super clear on what that means.
Hey, well, on this, I got a little segue for you.
All right.
So there's one thing that kind of proves the improvements, right, on the live service is that there's a lot less players on PTU, and there's a lot less players on tech previews than before, which is a good thing, right? That means players want to play the real game, and I'm really happy about that. But it does mean if you want to help, join those tech previews, right? The more people we get, even if it's for a short period of time, it's really helpful because we get a more larger set of people that can try it out, and that gives us more data.
Yeah, I want to talk about something. I got to show you sparked something that's actually a bugaboo for me, and
Okay.
I got a platform and I'm going to use it. So we did this change. We did this change this year. We went to what will be 10 or 11 patches throughout the entire year. This almost monthly cadence of live stuff. So you've got the live stuff, a new live thing going every month. People are like, let's put something new in the game. We've had a thing new every month. We've had a PTU every month that runs alongside it. Now we've got tech preview. This pace that we're at this year has forced us to split our audience and stuff like this. It's like, well, do you want to be playing the live game, or would you rather be playing the PTU version, or now with tech preview, would you rather be playing tech preview? And the reality is, we need everybody everywhere. The live version is the version of the game that we're making. That's the version we want. We want everybody to experience it, but we also need them for testing. So we want them to be in PTU. We also need them for the specialized testing. So we want them to be in tech preview. And it seems, and this is one of the reasons why I talked earlier that we're reevaluating the 2026 release schedule for this reason. We've created a situation where we want our players in too many places at once, if I'm allowed to speak honestly, and I'll find out when I check my team's messages afterwards. It's a thing that needs addressing. So and it's hard. It's hard. I don't know. Short of altering the schedule, which we're talking about, what more can we do to encourage people to participate in PTU and tech preview, other than us sitting here on the show and begging them? Is there something?
Yeah, we've got some ideas. To be honest, like, we're toying with a few ideas, like incentivization programs or things like that. But this is slippery slope. It's a very slippery slope. And I kind of like the kind of volunteer approach for this.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like, we do have an issue where, we're testing this, and we have the next patch is already cooking, and so it's always rolling. I mean, at the same time, it's a testament to our ops team that I want to salute one more time, because these guys are always on the. They're always on the clock. There's always a build going out, and so these guys are kicking ass. But
it's hard because we certainly don't want everybody playing nothing but PTU. Second a patch goes out there, the next week there's another PTU. So it's like, only play the worst, most broken version of Star Citizen. But we need your help testing it. But it's this weird catch-22 that I don't know that we have a real great answer for, other than adjusting the schedule, which we're looking at.
Honestly, it's interesting that they didn't mention this increased focus on testing, this group testing stuff that we've been looking at. In fact, there's a post here by Yogi on it. It's interesting they didn't mention this here, because it's kind of the answer to that, right? They need testing, but they can't rely on the PTU in terms of wide testing. They need focus testing on certain gameplay.
I don't know that we have a real great answer for, other than adjusting the schedule, which we're looking at next year. And then it gets exasperated when we do timed events like Race for Stanton or whatnot, when it's like, okay, well, if you want these rewards that are only available during this period of time, then you have to be in live in order to get them. But then it's like, well, we got a PTU over here. Wouldn't you like to be in a PTU over here? It's like, well, no, I want to get the rewards. They're over there. And we extended Race for Stanton. That helped with that a little bit. But it's just that there's no obvious answer to this. I'm pontificating on one of the interesting challenges of our development model that exists, that I don't think anybody really ever talks about publicly. And today we decided we were going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. So,
we're doing it live.
We're doing it live. It's one of those things we still need to figure out and address. BioNukes had a question. Hey, BioNukes, talk about one of those people that's been here as long as I have. It was a while back. I saved it, BioNukes. Why not have a set time for the servers in the back end to just reset every day? Why not just flip the switch every day, turn it off and turn it on again every day?
Well, so wait, that's one thing I forgot to put on the list of things we've changed this year, right? Which is that we take maintenance windows. We used to never do that. Now, why not do this every day, right? The issue that you get is that it's not just resetting the server. So, rebooting the servers, reloading the game shard from persistence and continuing, you're going to get right back in the same situation. So let's imagine. We're going to talk about cleanup and density a bit later, but let's go back to the 3.x days where we persist all the data in the shard and we have deep intersections. So a ship entered another ship, it's an intersection, is costing on the server. The server FPS is now shit, super low physics threads, using all the resources. And then you're like, okay, cool, let's do a daily reset, right? It's going to fix that, right? So you go through it, you reboot it. Cool. Now server reloads from persistence, and those ships are still intersecting, and so you're right back where you were. So if you would look at the graphs and you'd see FPS super low, 0 during the reset, 30, it's 5, instantly. And so what we've done in the past for this is now we have way more systems to deal with like this to reclaim performance, right, for these cases. So first of all we detect them, but also we do emit fresh shards periodically. So we kind of decide when it happens. But when we do massive maintenances, weekly maintenances, we don't take every week, but we do it when we have to make configuration changes or things like that. We'll take a downtime, and we're probably going to emit new shards or run the repair on some of those shards, and then that will help. So we kind of do that. We just don't do it systematically, because the reality is that's not completely how it works. For the backend persistence side of this, it's not something that we can solve easily, because the conditions are too great. You need the shard to be live to solve these things, to be able to do it.
What about a traditional, like, every Tuesday scheduled maintenance period, like every Tuesday at 4 a.m. Eastern time, whatever, things go down for 2 hours and come back?
We're going towards that now, like where we basically right now you can almost consider that every Tuesday we try to do a maintenance. Typically early in the morning UK time is a good time.
I feel like Monday maintenance makes a lot of
that's
sense.
where the least players are playing typically. But that said, we don't take it every week, because we don't always have to do it, and so sometimes it's not very necessary. But I'm an advocate to always take it, so that sometimes we use it to accelerate hotfixes. So in case you haven't noticed, we do hotfixes all the time, right? So we have this new deployment systems now, and we're able to roll hotfixes way faster. But when we roll a game server hotfix, it's going to take time to, what's the word that Ahmed uses? Percolate. It's going to take a while before it percolates, right?
Percolate.
And so sometimes you can have a game shard that has 10 servers, 2 of them have the hotfix, the others don't have it. So depending on where you're at in the shard, you have the fix or not, and it takes a while before all the game servers actually run into it. Now, obviously, if it's an unstable build, it's going to be much faster, because then server crash, back new instance with the new build. But these maintenance windows give us the opportunity to also synchronize that with a client hotfix when it's necessary, and so we can take everything down, patch the client, patch to all the game servers in one go, emit fresh shards if we have to, and then start again. And so that's why typically there's big changes that can come about in maintenances, and we want to use them more. Yeah, definitely.
I just like Monday maintenance because they both start with M.
First hour. And
that was part one.
That was part one, organizational changes. Let's take an interlude here. I'll ask you just a side question here. Let you get a drink or whatnot. With our last patch, what was the last patch? The August patch, 4.3. There was a big curiosity with the wolf on PTU right before we crossed the finish line to release that. We discovered something that didn't show up in any testing and whatnot. Walk me through what happened with the wolf.
That's a beautiful one. That was fun. So yeah, like you mentioned, we're walking up to 4.3. We're at the point where pretty much everything has been validated and tested, and there's something with the wolf that we're going to try to do more in the future, is that we try to respect what we call the art of surprise. Is that typically beforehand we used to put everything in the patch, go. Now for certain things, we want to try to respect some level of surprise. We find that it's cooler for you guys when you discover things when it goes live and not necessarily on PTU 2 weeks before, right? And so we're trying.
Or in shows every week.
Or it shows every week, exactly, right? So and so the wolf is part of that. And so the wolf was going on PTU for validation, because it was part of 4.3 release at the very last minute, right? So I think 24 hours before, just to make sure everything's fine. Well, it turns out everything was not fine.
This is another anecdote for how fast they're trying to move between updates this year.
We look at the reports. There was one crash that we had to solve, which was solved rapidly. But then we looked at some very curious reports, and so players would basically report it. I forget the IC exactly, but something like, I landed with my wolf, exited the ship, and then was walking around. Then my friend took my wolf and flew away, and then the world despawned around me. So initially, it sounds like a fluke report, but then a bunch of people reproduced it, and it was like, I have this, and so what is going on? And so typically, then that's where our player relations team goes like, something's fishy going on here. So we started to look into it, and so we assembled a quick crew to check this out. And now this is kind of skeleton crew, because we're moving to a release. But typically, it's very late here I'm in the UK right now, so it's very late here in the UK. US teams, it's night for them. So just get this crew on together, start looking at this issue. And so basically, the issue that we're seeing is that sometimes, when a bug starts with sometimes, it's going to be a fun one. So sometimes when you exit the wolf, you desync between the client and the server. And what actually happened is, if you looked at so we have this tool we call the server renderer, which allows us to basically view what the server sees, right? And so think of it like a side camera that we have when we have access to the game server, and then our game client, and you can see what the server sees. Right? And so you'd see my character get out of the wolf, with that super nice animation, exit, and he jumps at the end.
Yep.
Jumps off the ship. Wow, this is like super cool. And then I'm walking around on my client, everything's fine. Game server, I'm literally in EVA animation floating over the planet. And the thing is, I can't exit this condition, right? No matter what I'll do on my client now, the server will always see me attached to the ship in EVA anim. So we're like, okay, what's going on, right? Now we start looking at this. So at this point, John Crew and I are, losing our minds trying to get a proper reproduction. But then we realized, we put new animations for this ship. So the Wolf was one of the new ships that have enter-exit animations, right, that are brand new, like just captured, import in the game, all that stuff. We don't do this all the time. And putting animations in the game is not just put the anim in. It's like it's timing. There's events to link them. There's linking them to the actor system, how they get triggered. Inserting them into ship pipeline, stuff like that. And so we start debugging this. First step was, they probably forgot to put some of the seed events on it. So we do a first patch, we try it out. Now the QA guys come back like, no, still happens. So like, okay, now I think if the timing is wrong on these events, so let's change that. No, I think we went through like 7 or 8 iterations of fixes to try to figure out what was actually happening about that exact animation and why the ship system was disconnecting it. We went into full debugging on the actor. So the actor is your character and all the states it can go through. And we could just see the two differ, right? But it made no sense. Why is one working and the other working? So at this point, we're kind of running out of ideas. And so that's when I used the button. I called the Bug Smasher himself, Mark Aben, on the show. And so Mark came in and was as flabbergasted as we were about what the hell is causing this. And then so we went into a bit more debugging sessions. At this point, we're deep engine side physics and collisions to try to figure out what's going on. And then in the end, Mark just goes in the typical Bug Smasher fashion, just goes into what about gravity? And so we take a look at how the ships have physics grids. These grids have sizes and mesh sizes, and the animations is based on the geometry. And there was no gravity in the ship, 0, 0, 0, right? And so basically it was a combination of the physics grid, the fact that the actor on the server runs at a lesser resolution. So your client, when you're in game, is at full resolution. The server doesn't run at full resolution when he's simulating your character. And so combination of this would make the server would actually reach the EVA state. So now you're floating in EVA, right? But with no gravity and no other movement, it will never solve itself. And he's also overlapping over the grid, which is too big. And so that was a bit of a combination of like blunders, from geometry to wrong physics grid to out of no gravity. And it made the bug also not 100%. It wasn't like I exit the ship and it happens. It would need to happen like it took about 10 to 15 times you would get it one time. And so, all right, so we fixed the bug. We get this in there. Internal QA validates it. And then to be able to properly validate it, as you know, we need players. And so that's where we mobilized you guys on PTU to come and try this out. And this was one of the best moments I've had testing in this game, where roughly 100 people showed up with wolves at Boondoggle on Hurston, and then 200 people are entering and exiting the wolf, right, to see if they get detached from the animation. It was a fantastic moment. And so, that was a fun one to troubleshoot.
And that was your free audio only episode of Bug Smashers.
They've had a couple other things. Throughout this year where a ship has come in and it's been missing a little bit of polish or a little something that needs to be added to it. I think the Wolf still has physicalized interactable components that it needs added. But those, I think, are some of the other little signs of how fast that they're moving, that the ships come out and they're not even fully ready.
I want to shout out Dennis Daniel, who's in chat right now.
What's up, Dennis?
Hi, Dennis. It's your man.
My man.
All right. Part 1, year of playability. Our little Bug Smashers interlude. Folks watching, we've got another hour or 2 left. So we're going to be here for a bit. In case you're like, why would they talk about that? Whatever. We're getting there. Part 2, server meshing. Yeah.
I kind of do want to end our part 1 here. God, there's still so much left in this video. So like whatever the follow-up would be is going to have to be so long. But this was more just kind of a look at like playability. What are they doing to try and make it more playable? Obviously, we had plenty of commentary to go with that. This video is getting plenty long though, so I won't continue to record on that one. Yeah, we'll finish this one up here.